Hey guys, Solid here and welcome back to another episode of Adventure News Monthly Wrap-Up. It's hot as Satan's unmentionables in here because I don't have aircon. As you know, we've got the international motorcycle shows happening right now, which means lots of juicy new adventure bikes. So let's just jump straight into what has dropped so far. So let's start with MV Agusta as they released two very interesting adventure bikes. We'll start with the bigger one, what they're calling the 9.5. I'll give the specs, then my thoughts on each of the bikes. So the 9.5 is a 930cc triple from MV Agusta. They're claiming that it is quite dirt focused. It makes 123 horsepower at 10,000 RPM and 75.2 foot-pound of torque at 7,000 RPM. It also has a 21 18-inch setup, so that does signify that it is a little dirt focused, at least in its wheel setup. It's got 8.6 inches of travel at the front and 8.3 at the back. It has a manual and an auto version, so it'll be like the Hondas with their DCT clutch and their regular manual gearbox. Very interesting that MV Agusta are doing that. I would really like to get more details on how they're going to execute that. They're saying that it'll be 220 kilograms dry, so that's not too bad. But then you consider it's got a 20-litre fuel tank, then plus coolant, oil, brake fluid, that kind of thing. It's starting to get up there a little bit, but certainly not too crazy for a big adventure bike. It also comes with Brembo brakes, no surprise there, being an MV Agusta. We're going to get premium stuff on this bike. Seat height is 850 millimeters. Shorter riders, let me know, is that acceptable or would you have liked to have seen lower? Down in the comments section. It's also getting a 7-inch TFT screen. I'm sure it will have lots of different electronic packages available. They just haven't mentioned what kind, whether we'll get rain, enduro, all that kind of good stuff that we expect from our big flagship motorcycles. And I think this definitely should be thought of as a big flagship adventure bike, not a middleweight. I really think we should start talking about the bigger adventure bikes in weight categories rather than engine size. I consider this a heavyweight, not a middleweight, purely because 220 kilos plus 20 liters of fuel plus all the other fluids that go into the bike, you're starting to probably push 240 kilos, which really isn't conducive to really serious off-road. So saying this bike is dirt focused, I think is a little bit on the marketing side, but I do still think it'll be a very nice premium option. More bikes breeds more competition, which is only a good thing for us, the consumers. So happy to see MV Agusta join the ranks in the adventure bike world. The other thing I wanted to point out was the engine characteristics. The power is made quite high up in the rev range, so is the torque. I think this bike will lend itself better to being a more of a really fun road adventure bike. This will really be able to tear up the twisties, but I don't think it'll really be that great for low-end grunt. Time will tell, of course, whether the engine characteristics have been tuned to accommodate for the high peak output, but at least from a glance at the spec sheet, it does have me a little concerned as to its applicability off-road, but time will tell. The one I got more excited about initially, but the more I dive into it, I have gained some skepticism along the way, is the 5.5. This is a 550cc parallel twin MV Agusta. I got very excited about this till I started going through the specs and saw where this bike is coming from. So let's get into it. So as I said, it's a 550cc parallel twin. It makes 47.6 horsepower and 37.62 foot-pound of torque. It has a 17-inch wheel setup, so that suggests that this is more road focused than the big 9.5, but it does still keep spoke wheels, which is a very nice thing to see in this category. We don't really see many spoke wheel options in the small displacement adventure bike world, but other than say the Versys, and if we're counting the Rally as an adventure bike from Honda, those are the only two options you've really got. I also heard that they're tubeless, so the 9.5 is tubeless and so is this little 5.5, so that's another double thumbs up for the tubeless on this bike. This bike also comes with Brembo, so it's nice to see that they haven't shorted us on the premium stuff on this smaller bike. It's 220 kilos. It's the same weight as the 9.5, but it makes almost 1/3 of the power, so that's a bit concerning. And to me, that really cancels out the whole reason why you go for a smaller displacement adventure bike. The whole appeal of those smaller adventure bikes is that lighter weight, that ease of use that comes with it. The other thing of note here is it still gets the TFT screen, a little bit smaller than the 9.5, so it's good to see that still we're maintaining some premium touches. Of course, this is an MV Agusta, so I expect these things to stay on the bike, but often this is not the case with small displacement adventure bikes. They usually get shortchanged in a lot of features. MV Agusta also haven't spoken about any electronic rider aids on this bike. Now, the thing that made it clear to me as to why this bike weighs so much is MV Agusta aren't actually making this motorcycle by themselves. They're making it in conjunction with QJ Motors, which is a massive Chinese motorcycle firm. They make really affordable bikes and they've been getting better and better. But what they're not good at is making very premium, lightweight, high performance motorcycles. And I think that's why we're seeing the weight with cheaper materials used in the Chinese manufacturing process and perhaps not as much practice in making the high end and lightweight stuff. This is why we're seeing such a heavy bike. Be interesting to see how this bike is accepted, but maybe this will spark more premium, small adventure bikes. So we'll see what happens. Sticking with the Chinese-Italian theme, we've got the Benelli TRK 800. We've got a 754cc parallel twin. It makes 76.2 horsepower and 67 Newton meters of torque. Comes with a 6-speed slipper clutch, which is nice. It has 6.7 inches of travel. Comes with Brembo brakes as well, which was a surprise and a nice thing to see on a budget bike. Carries 21 liters of fuel, so that's a fairly sizable tank, so you'll be able to go a long distance with this bike. We've got an 834mm seat height. I think that's pretty reasonable. What worries me though is that this is 226 kilos dry. Without that big fuel tank full of fuel and without all the fluids, this is really going to be a big porker. It's going to be 6 or 7 kilos heavier than the 9.5 from MV Agusta, but making almost half the power. That is a concern, and again, it's the same kind of criticism. Are people willing to get an adventure bike like this when they can get far more performance and lighter weight out of a lot of Japanese and European motorcycles? If it's cheap enough, people will flock to it. So that will be the real clincher for this. Will the Benelli be affordable enough to offset its shortcomings? Another one that caught my eye just as a little offhand, oh maybe that could work kind of thing as an adventure bike, was the Brixton Crossfire 500 XC. Now again, Chinese European amalgamation here. So we've got an Austrian company that's producing in China. And this is a little scrambler 500cc parallel twin. It makes 47 horsepower, again, so that it's learner legal in a lot of the graded licensing countries. It makes 43 Newton meters of torque, has a 19-17-inch wheel setup. So that's what perked my interest. It's actually got an adventure bike wheel setup like a lot of scramblers do. So this could really lend itself to the off-road kind of riding. And Brixton have actually said this will be capable of riding in the dirt. How hardcore it will be kind of remains to be seen, but at least you should be able to do dirt roads, and if you're in the UK, green lanes, that kind of easy off-road scenarios. It also comes with a 13.5 litre tank, which is tiny for the adventure world, but isn't too bad for the scrambler world. Again, the same question mark, is coming out of China. So are you willing to take that leap and bet on the quality of the production that is currently coming out of China? They're getting better, but I still remain a little bit skeptical. Next up, we have Yamaha getting everyone excited with a T700 rally version. Now, we've seen this before where a third party has made its own rally version of the Tenere 700. This time it's actually Yamaha in-house doing this, but they've said they've got no plans to put this into production. But this, we know, is the kind of thing manufacturers do to test the waters, to see how much excitement they garner. I'm not going to go through all the specs of this because basically they just went through their accessory catalog and threw everything that is available onto this bike to make it look impressive and shiny. Most of it was bolt-on stuff. The notable differences were this has a different ECU, so obviously they've done some power mapping stuff. They have improved the suspension. That is one problem with the stock T700 for guys that are really pushing it off-road, as well as bigger brakes. So it'll stop better, it's better suspended, and it'll have slightly better performance, I expect, with the ECU tweaks. I think that is probably reason enough to offer it as a premium package next to the standard Tenere 700. There is a subset of people that want want that better suspension, slightly better brakes, and a little more performance. Yamaha, yes, we do want that. Hurry up and get on with it. Enough said. The final one I wanted to tack on here is the Husqvarna Norden 901. It was released in the last couple of weeks and we've got plenty of reviews, but I didn't make a video of it and some people asked me why. And my answer was I was just underwhelmed by it and I didn't make a video, but I thought I really should have put it into my content because that's the story there, that I really was a little bit disappointed. Not that it's a bad bike, it was just I got a little hopeful that maybe Husqvarna would take this opportunity to really differentiate itself from the KTM. So I love the look. I think it's far better than the KTM 890 that looks like a weird anorexic triceratops. But I really would have liked to have seen it differentiate itself a little more from the 890. Try and make it even more lightweight and even more dirt capable than the 890R if that's possible. But maybe they just didn't want to spend the R&D. Whatever reason, it's more choice, it's a better looking 890, so I'm sure a lot of people will be happy about that. It is what it is, and that's why I didn't make a video on it. We've seen for the first time in the international motorcycle shows two real big themes. One theme is that a lot of manufacturers just don't care anymore. They've realized, just like we have years ago, that social media has made these shows almost redundant. They can get direct to the consumer without all the costs of getting to those big shows. So it really was a bit lackluster this year. The last thing I wanted to talk on was how I think China are really coming. Like I said, they were the main focus of the adventure and off-road motorcycles at this international motorcycle show. It's a little bit like watching Japan happen all over again. They really came out of World War II with a lot of stigma, and they also created some pretty pathetic bikes to start with. Before you knew it, they were really answering the consumer demands. Soon after that, they were top of the pile in quality and production. So I think China are tracking that a little bit. They're certainly not there yet, and I think we've got a little while to wait before we see them really make something that is on par with what we expect from Europe or Japan, but they are getting closer, and I just wanted to recognize that. It is an interesting thing to watch happen. And that's about it. Don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you later, guys.